Okay. Uh, Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming here today, and please enjoy and listen a little bit of a book that I'm gonna be reading. Well, first of all, its title is "No Longer Human" by Osamu Dazai. I will be reading it in English though, so hope you guys can listen to it chill and trying to get to sleep or just doing some work. Well, first of all, this is a story of a man who forgot how to belong. So, a little bit of synopsis is that no longer human, or in this subject is Yosuoba, is a man who hides his pain behind jokes and smile while feeling completely disconnected from the world. Through his writings, he shared his struggle to understand himself and his failure in love and friendship. As he drifts further into despair, his story becomes a haunting look at alienation and self doubt. With raw honesty, Osamu Dazai explores what it means to be human and what happens when you can't be. By the way, for you guys, if you haven't know Osamu Dazai yet, he is a Japanese novelist that was known for his deeply emotional and honest writing. His work often explore loneliness, guilt, and the struggle to find meaning in life. Despite his tragic life, Dazai's story, especially No Longer Human, continue to touch readers around the world for their raw humanity and timeless insight. By the way, I'll just start from the prologue, okay? Um, Prologue. I had seen the three photos of that man. The first photo was him in his younger self. If I had to guess, he looked like he was around 10. The man, or the boy, was surrounded by women with bigger posters than him. I imagined them as his sister or his cousins. He was standing beside a pond in a garden, wearing a bold-sized stripes pattern hakama. His head was tilted 30 degrees to the left, and he was looking at the camera with an unsightly smile. Unsightly? But probably to thick-skinned people? Yeah, in other words, those who do not hold any appreciation toward beauty, they would say some empty flatteries like, such an adorable boy, isn't he? With uninterested face. To be fair, I would not say it was an absolutely empty of a flattery, as the boy's smile did have a hint of adorableness. But to the people who had learned the beauty in things, even if it was only a moment, I believe they would whisper things like, such a revolting pride. They would throw the photo with a repulsed expression as if they had just discarded a caterpillar. Indeed, the more I saw his smile, the more I could feel an undescribable, weird, eerie feeling creep behind my back. I could say again that it was not a smile, not in the least. There was no speck of happiness at all in that smile. If you wanted proof, you could see how he was standing while clenching his fist tightly. Human, by no means, would not clench their fists while bursting into smile. It was a monkey, the smile of a monkey. Instead of a smile, those were merely ugly wrinkles that puckered on his face. The photo was undeniably eerie and by some means sordid, to the point it would make anyone who see it feel nauseous. I had never seen a child with such an inexplicable expression in my life. The second portrait was another shocking transformation of that man. It was him in his student days. I could not say for sure whether he was a high school or college student. At any rate, he was a student with an exceptionally charming face. Yet, Just like the previous photo, I do not feel like I was looking a photo of a human. He was wearing a uniform and a bit of white handkerchief picked out of the breast pocket. He was sitting on a rattan chair while crossing a leg. Needless to say, he was smiling, just like in the previous photo. In this time, it was not another wrinkled smile as if it was a monkey's. It was rather an ingenious smile. But again, it was different to the normal human smile. We might say it was the weight of blood or the bitterness of life. At any rate, this picture lacked of those notions. It wasn't as heavy as a small bird. It was as light as a feather, as light as a paper sheet. And it was smiling. In other words, it felt like an artificial moment. It wasn't conceited enough. It wasn't superficial enough. It wasn't ludicrous enough. And of course, it wasn't as if it was charming enough to attract others. And yet, the longer you saw it, the more you would realize how unpleasant this beautiful young man would make you feel. As if you had just read a creepy tale. I had never seen a young man this beautiful, yet this perplexing in my life. The last photo was the most horrendous. It was unclear how old he was, but a few white streaks nestled on his head. It was taken in the corner of an extremely filthy room. You could see the walls crumbled on at least 3 places. His hands were hovering over the heater, and he wasn't smiling this time. His face was void of any expressions. At any rate, it wasn't disgustingly horrid. How this photo captured the moment of him warming both of his hands while looking so ghastly as if he were dying. And that wasn't even the strangest thing to point out. Since his face was quite big, you could see each of his features more carefully. But his forehead was ordinary. The wrinkles on his forehead were ordinary. His eyebrows were ordinary. His eyes were ordinary. Not to mention his nose, his lips, his chin too. Good grief. Not even a speck of impression came off from his face, nor did it have any unique features at all. If I close my eyes, I would forget this face in an instant. I might remember the room's wall or the small heater, but I would not remember the face of the room's owner. All of the memories of it would immediately finish. The kind of face that would not make it as a painting, not even for a comic. Even if I opened my eyes, this face wouldn't even make me gleam in joy while bursting out. Ah, I remember it now. If I had to put it with more extremely, I would remember this face even if I open my eyes and look at this photo again. It was just too unpleasant. I wanted to immediately avert my eyes off. I expected a person expression at their death's door was more memorable at this. I wonder if this was the same feeling as if I just saw a horse head attached to a human body. At any rate, I felt an inexplicable feeling of disgust. I knew it. I had never seen a man with such a perplexing face in my life. Part 1. My life was nothing but a series of same. I could not even guess the exact meaning of human life. I was born in a village in the Tohoku region. I had never seen a train until I grew up. I climbed up and down the station bridge, never realizing its purpose to let people cross over the tracks. I was convinced that the bridge was made to decorate the station and give an eccentric touch to its crown, as if it were an amusement center made by foreigners. The assumptions never left my mind for a quite long time. I kept climbing the bridge up and down, thinking it was a refined playground, and the best service the station had ever offered to the public. After I found out the bridge was nothing more than a practical facility for passengers to cross over the tracks, my interest dissipated in an instant. Again, when I was a child, I once read a picture book with an underground railway on it. The first time I saw it, I know it wasn't made for the purpose of utility. I always believed that it was merely because riding underground was more enjoyable than on the ground. Since childhood, I had always been of delicate health and was frequently confined to bed. While I lay on my bed, I kept wondering how uninspiring the seats and the pillow covers were as a decoration. After I found out that they were made to be used daily in my 20s, I remember the sadness and disappointment I felt toward humans' thriftiness. Again, I had never known the feeling of hunger. No, I was not talking about the fact that I was raised in a well off family. It was never my intention to offer such an inane remark. To put it another way, I could not comprehend the feeling of hunger in any sense. What I say might be weird, but even if my stomach feel it, my whole awareness remained oblivious to that feeling. Back when I was a student and returned home after school, the people at my house would come to me and say something like, "Aren't you hungry?" We know how that feels. You must be really hungry after you got back from school. How about amanato? There's a castella cake and bread too. As if to show my flattering ability, I would answer, "I'm hungry," in a harsh tone, and gulp down all this amanato in my throat. Even so, I still failed to grasp the notion of hunger. Needless to say, I could eat in a large portion. Still, I almost had no recollection of eating with a purpose to satisfy my hunger. I could eat bizarre food. I could feast on lavish meal. And if it was difficult sometimes, I would accept anything edible that was offered by the host of the other house. To my childhood self, mealtime in my own house was the most agonizing hours I ever remembered. In my country house, we, a family of 10 people, ate our meal on our own trays and sitting in two lines while facing each others. Naturally, I, as the youngest child, sat on the farthest seat. The dining room was set in a gloom, whether it was lunch or dinner time. Even though there were 10 of us, we would always feast on our meal in deep silence. It was so gloomy, it sent chills to my bone. Moreover, since mine was an old fashioned country family, the side dishes were mostly predetermined, so it was futile to wish something exotic and luxury. As the result, I became dreadful over the lunchtime. Inside that gloomy room, I remember I picked up the food and stuffed my mouth, shivering because of the cold since I was seated on the farthest chair. I kept wondering why human must eat 3 times in a day. Everyone was sitting with such a solemn expression. You could even mistake this as if we were performing some kind of ritual. At a determined time, the family would gather in that gloomy dining room 3 times a day, and they would find the side dishes were perfectly lined on their trays. Even if we actually didn't want to eat, we had no choice but silently gulp down the food while facing downward. There were times I even thought they were sending their prayers to the living spirit throughout the house. I could only hear the "if you don't eat, you'll die" words as nothing but a threat, anxiety, and fear. Anxiety and fear always down upon me every time. I remember the superstition, which still seems like a bit of superstition to me for now. Humans would die if they didn't eat, and humans work to eat. Such an incomprehensible and obscure quote, no matter I think about it. Yet, no other word could leave such a horror impression more than that quote. What I was saying that, in other words, I understood no none of the human's hardship. I was anxious when I realized mine and other humans' concept of happiness were completely different. Day by day, the anxiety made me tossing and turning on my bed, moaning in my sleep to the point it could make me a man mad. I kept wondering what was exactly the truest meaning of happiness. Since I was a child, people around me kept saying I was a fortunate human, but it was a hellish life for me. Instead, even by comparison, they were the one who looked a lot more fortunate to me. I carried 10 lumps of calamity on my back. Each slum was evenly disastrous to the point I even thought if one of them was put on the neighbor's back, it was enough to suck their life dry. In other words, I did not understand whether it was the degree of the real nature of the neighbor's hardship. I did not understand it at all. There was a practical hardship, but that kind of hardship could be resolved by eating. Still, the greatest anguish that was comparable to the greatest hell. It even could blow my lump of calamities up. But as expected, I did not understand if they could continue to live without taking their own life, without falling to insanity. Keep discussing about political party without losing to despair, without submitting to their own fate. Was that really a hardship? Did not they just become an egoist thinking that it was natural for those things to happen in their life, while never doubted of themselves, not even once. If that was the case, it should be easy. But maybe that was how human works. Was it not, was not it perfect? I didn't know. At night they could sleep soundly, and at the morning they were energized. I wonder what kind of dream they always had. I wonder what kind of thought ran in his head when they woke. Money? I hardly believe if money was only answers. I had a feeling someone told me humans live to it, but I had never heard that humans live to make money. But depend on the case. No, I still did not understand. The more I thought about it, the less I understood. The anxiety, the fear surrounded me as if it changed me completely. I couldn't interact with my neighbors. What kind of things should I talk about? What kind of intonation should I say it with? I was at loss. At that point, I started to become a clown. It was the last advance I could think of to approach human. The thought of humans frightened me, yet I couldn't treat them as if they were non-existent. And that's how this clownery act became my method to interacting with human. I always put my best smile on the surface, but inside, I was desperate to serve them, sweating bullets in what could be called the most critical moment of my life. Since I was a child, I could not even understand my family. The things that made them fall in despair and the things that made them continue to live. I failed to understand it at all, not even a little. The fear deeply instilled in me, and since I could not bear that feeling of uneasiness, I became so good at performing my clownery act. In other words, since God knows when, I already become a kid who said nothing but lie after lie. During that time, I remember the time I saw our family photos. Even though the others had such serious look on their face, I was the only one who showed a crooked smile. This was also one of a childish yet miserable clownery acts. I also never answered back anything my relatives said to me. That little incident hit me as if I was struck by a bolt. It drove me insane. Far from answering them back, I thought that incident must be the so-called truth of all human beings, unchanged since a long time. Since I did not have a similar power to incite such truth, I wonder if I could not live alongside humans anymore. That was the reason why I would not argue or justify my thoughts. When people spoke ill of me, I thought I had made a terrible mistake. I received those hard words as I kept silent, but inside, the fear consumed me to the point I went insane. While being blamed or scolded by other people might not make me feel good, I saw something more frightening than a lion, a crocodile, or a dragon in their face. It was the true nature of the beasts, the human beings. Normally, that nature was hidden deep inside each of them. But when it got their chance, let's say a cow was peacefully sleeping at a savanna, it could suddenly sense a horsefly coming, immediately killed the fly with a slap by its tail. Human nature was also the same. Humans could suddenly reveal their true nature at any time, and the memories of it alone could make me tremble in fear. When I thought that how it also one of the qualities of a human must have to be able to continue living in this world, it was as if I fell deeper into the despair. Since interacting with human always make me break out in a cold sweat, I ended up having no confidence toward my own behaviors and pull all of those inside of my heart. All of the melancholy and the anxiety were hidden by the innocence and optimism. That's how I gradually perfected my persona as a clown and an eccentric person. I didn't care the method as long as I could make them laugh. That way, even if I was not a part of their so called life, they probably wouldn't mind of me. At any rate, I couldn't let myself become an eyesore to them. I felt increasingly like I was nothing, like the wind or like the sky. So I acted like a clown in front of my family and even did more than I should to satisfy the servants, who were more incomprehensible and mysterious than my family. There was one time when I wore a yukata with a red wool sweater while I was passing through the corridor. It made me, it made everyone laugh. Even my eldest brother, who rarely laughed, bursting into laughter after he saw me and said, "It really doesn't suit you, Yo-chan," with a voice full of affection. Even if I was not the weirdo who didn't know the difference of heat and cold and decided to walk around while wearing a wool sweater in the middle of summer. I wore my sister's legging on my arms and let those peek out from the sleeve, making it look like I was wearing a sweater. My father had a lot of businesses in Tokyo, so he had a villa in Sakuragicho, Ueno, and he spent most of the month at that villa in Tokyo. When he returned home, he always brought a lot of souvenirs. A lot enough even for a relative as if it was a hobby of his. One night, before he went to Tokyo, he called all the children to the living room. Oh, it's 10 o'clock. Sorry, it's my 10 o'clock alarm. Oh, sorry, it's 8, right? Yeah, it's 8 o'clock. Okay, where? Okay, the last one is from one night before he went to Tokyo. He called all the children to the living room and asked for souvenirs we wanted him to bring next time. As he asked each of us while laughing, he wrote down all our answer on his notebook. It was a rare for my father to be this affectionate to us. How about you, Yuzu? When it was my turn, I could only mumble. If someone suddenly asked me about something I wanted, I didn't know how to answer them. Though it's like, it doesn't matter. It's not that would make me happy. Slightly crossed my mind. In the same time, I could not reject something given by others, no matter how much I didn't like it. I couldn't say no to something I dislike. Even if I had something I like, I approached it furtively, as if it tasted extremely bitter. It was such an agonizing moment, to the point I couldn't describe it. In other words, I didn't even capable to choose between two options. Looking back, this might be the one main things that contributed to my shameful life. Since I kept him waiting by being silent and fidgeting, my father started to look displeased and started to open his mouth. Is it a book? How about lion mask for New Year's lion dance they sold in shops at Asakusa? Don't you want it? When the don't you want it question came up, I know there's no way out for me. I couldn't prepare the right answer, even as a joke. The clown just met his ruin. I think a book would be the best, said by my brother with such a serious expression. Is that so? As my father losing his interest, he closed his notebook without writing anything. What a failure. I made my father furious, and without doubt, the revenge would be the most terrible thing. That night, trembling under the cover, I wonder if was any way to make it right. I quietly, I quietly got up, went to the sitting room, opened the drawer of the desk where he had earlier put away his notebook, found the page with the souvenir order, licked the pencil, and wrote "Lion Mask." Then I went back to bed. I didn't actually want that lion mask at all. In fact, I would have preferred a book. But I realized my father wanted to buy the lion mask for me. And to please him, I forced myself to go on this little midnight adventure. And so, my desperate little trick was, as it turned out, rewarded with a great success. Just as I had hoped, before long, my father returned to Tokyo, and I overheard him speaking loudly to my mother while I was in the children's room. When I went to the toy shop in Nakamise, I opened my notebook and found this. Look here, it says lion mask, but it's not my handwriting. Huh? I tilted my head in confusion, and then it hit me. This must be Yozo's prank. When I asked him before, he just grinned and kept quiet. But later on, he must really wanted that lion mask. Honestly, that boy is quite an odd one. He pretended like nothing happened but still wrote it in. If he wanted it that badly, he should just say so. I ended up laughing right there at the toy shop. Call Yuso here at once. Meanwhile, I gathered the maids and servant in the Western style room. Had one of the men bang randomly on the piano keys? Well, we live in a countryside, but the house was well equipped with just about everything. And I danced an Indian dance to that chaotic melody. My impromptu performance sent everyone into fits of laughter. My second older brother even set off a flash and took a photo of me mid-dance. When the photo was developed, it caused yet another round of uproar through the house. My little baby was peeking out from the fold of my loincloth, which was actually a printed Furoski. For me, this too might have been another unexpected success. I subscribe to more than 10 new boys magazine every month, and, and, and in addition to those, I quietly read all sorts of other books ordered from Tokyo. I was truly familiar with characters like Dr. Mechara Kuchara and Dr. Nanja Monja, and I also had a good grasp of ghost stories, storytelling, rakugo, and Edo period anecdotes. So I had no shortage of material to amuse the family by saying ridiculous things with a straight face. But school. At school, I had started to be respected, but even the idea of being respected filled me with dread. To me, being respected meant that I had almost perfectly deceived people, only to be eventually seen through by someone all knowing, completely exposed, and made to suffer a shame worse than death. That was my definition of what it meant to be respected. Even if I deceive people and earn their respect, there would always be someone who saw through my lie. And once that person exposed the truth, everyone else would realize they had been fooled. Their rage and desire for revenge, what would that look like? Just imagining it was enough to make my hair stand on the end. More than being born into a wealthy family, it was my so called ability. I'm so sorry. More than being born into a wealthy family, it was my so called ability that nearly earned me the respect of the entire school. I had been a sickly child and had often missed a month or two, or even nearly an entire academic year due to illness. Yet, even then, I would return to school, still weak, and riding in a rickshaw. Just in time for the final exams. And when I took them, I always seemed to outperform everyone in my class. Even when I was feeling healthy, I hardly studied at all. At school, I spent class time drawing comics and used break times to explain them to my classmates and make them laugh. In composition class, I only wrote funny stories. Even when the teachers warned me about it, I didn't stop because I knew that secretly the teacher looked forward to my silly tales. One day, as usual, I wrote the story about an incident that happened on the train while I was traveling to Tokyo with my mother. I had deliberately urinated into a spittoon in the train's hallway, pretending not to know what it was. I wrote the piece with a deliberately sorrowful tone, confident that the teacher would laugh. Curious, I quietly followed the teacher out to the classroom after handing it. Sure enough, the moment he stepped into the hallway, he pulled out my composition from the stack, started reading it as he walked, and chuckled quietly. When he got to the faculty room and finished reading, he burst into laughter, his face turning red, and immediately showed it to the other teachers. I watched all this and was thoroughly satisfied. I was such a mischievous kid. I succeeded in being seen as what they called a mischievous kid. I succeeded in escaping being respected. My report cards show perfect tense in every subject, except for conduct, which was always a 6 or a 7. That too becomes a source of laughter for the whole household. But the truth, my nature was the complete opposite of this so-called mischievous child. By that time, I had already been taught sorrowful things, violated by the maids and manservant. Looking back now, I believe that doing such a thing to child is one of the most vile, base, and cruel crimes a human can commit. Still, I endure it. I even felt as tough. I had come to understand another facet of human nature. I merely gave a powerless smile. Had I been in the habit of feeling the truth, perhaps I could have reported their crimes to my father or mother without saying. But I couldn't fully understand even my own parents. Appealing to the other human being, I had no faith in such a method. Even if I told my father, my mother, a police officer, or even the government, wouldn't it all end in the same way? Wouldn't it all just be buried under the smooth talking excuses of someone more skilled at getting by in the world? I know all too well that it would inevitably be one sided and incomplete after all. Appealing to humans was ultimately pointless. I felt that there was no choice but to continue enduring in silence and playing the clown. What's this? Are you talking about distrust of humanity? Huh? When did you become a Christian? Some people might sneer like that, but to me, distrust of humanity doesn't necessarily lead directly to religion. In fact, including those very people who mock it, humans go on living with mutual distrust without even thinking of Jehovah or anything like that. This was something from my childhood. A prominent member of a political party my father belonged to came to our town to give a speech. Well, for part one, I think that's all. We still got like 100 pages, and it was still on the 18th page, and it was already about like 45 minutes, so I'll be going for now. Thank you for watching, and thank you for listening, everyone. I'm doing this as a hobby, so I don't think that I'm quite a good reader, but I try to be. Well, good evening. That's part one from Severus Arca, and good evening, everyone. Thank you.